It's time to add functions to our coding arsenal. Functions make our script easier to read and understand by letting us reuse our code. Let's make a simple obby with the help of functions. Hello everyone, it's Luis from LogoLife, bringing you a series dedicated to Roblox game development. In this video, we'll be learning about different kinds of functions that we can use in our games. Let's get started. Scripts are what brings our games to life. Let's make a simple obby game and learn functions along the way. We're gonna start off with a bit of modeling, so if you're not familiar with this part, I recommend you check out this video that we did before. Here we go. Now I'm gonna go ahead and name each of the parts. Good habit, and it's gonna make our lives easier when it comes to scripting later. All right, now we can make our script. So let's go to server script service. It's script. Let's understand functions. What are functions? Functions let us write code and then reuse that later on in our script without having to rewrite the same code. So it's making everything a lot easier to read and understand. A simple example of a function would be the add function. So we start off by writing the word function, and we can give it a name, open up brackets, and then what goes inside got two names. You might have heard of parameters, you might have heard of arguments, or actually another name for it would be input. Okay, so it's basically what we're adding into the function to perform the task. So in this case, we're going to be adding a couple of arbitrary numbers. So I'm just going to call them those two numbers A and B. Then I'll put my cursor on the outside of the brackets, hit enter, and we got ourselves a code block. Now I can make a variable to store the result that equal to A plus B. And we can print the results. So we'll make a print statement, print the results. To call a function, you simply write its name, and then now instead of using the arbitrary numbers in the parameters, we give it the actual numbers that we want to add. So for example, we can add 1 and 2. That should give us 3. So if we hit play, we can see in our output, indeed we got 3. One thing I want to show you is that we actually put the print statement inside of the function. If I took out the print statement from here, then I would need to put it out here and just print the function itself. However, there is something just like this. It wouldn't work. This would actually print blank. I'm going to show you. Printing a blank statement, and that's because the function doesn't return anything. So you might have heard this really important word, keyword return. If we want to do this kind of thing where we print the result of a function, then we should put return and then result. Now that will actually work, and then we'll go and we'll get our 3. Another thing to note about returning is that it also ends the function. So if I were to put like a print statement here that says hello world, I'll get a little underline telling me something's wrong here. It expected the end of the function but got a print instead. Okay, so just keep that in mind. It serves two purposes. It takes us out of a function, and it also returns something that we're meant to use for later on. So something pretty cool that you can do. Now, to make our obby more interesting, one thing we could do is make our platforms disappear. So why don't we make a function that does just that? We're going to name it function, and then we'll call it disappear. And then we'll feed into it the part that we want to make disappear. Or want to wait a couple seconds. And then we'll set the transparency of the part equal to 1, which makes it fully transparent. And then we'll also set the collision of the part to false so that the players can just fall through. And we'll wait another 2 seconds. And then we'll make the part visible. So set transparency to 0 and collision to true so the players can stand on the platform. But note this argument, this parameter here is an arbitrary part. Okay. So let's go now and make our variables store the different parts that we have so far in our game. So we have 3 platforms. Let's go ahead and make our variables for that. Platform 1. And then we'll refer to the object by doing workspace and then the name of the part. I'm gonna bring your attention here to the file system, the Explorer. You can see that under the workspace folder, we have our different parts. So that's what we're doing here. We're doing workspace. This is the big folder up here at the top, and then the dot is bringing us inside of the folder where we can actually select the part. So here we go. Now it's just very similar we can do for the rest of the parts. So we'll do platform 2, and then it's gonna be equal to workspace and platform 2. We have 3 platforms. There it is. And we also want the ending platform as well. Okay, great. So what can we do? We can actually say the disappear function, and now instead of the arbitrary part, we actually refer to the platforms. So let's go and do that for our 3 platforms. And then we can test it and see how it works. We go in and hit play. Now we got ourselves... Oh, we forgot to anchor our pieces. Don't forget that, guys. Don't forget that. So you can come right here. You just highlight all the objects that are not supposed to move. Then hit anchor. All right, now we hit play. And we can actually observe the script that we have. So we see the parts are disappearing. And then it goes in sequence. That also gives you some insight as to how your script actually operates. You can see that it really waits until the disappearing has happened to platform 1 before it starts going to platform 2 and platform 3. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. Now, I want to end this thing with a bang. So I'm going to make a function that makes an explosion when I reach the end of the course. Okay, but we've messed around a little bit with the touch functionality in previous videos. I want to go a bit further in this one and explain it in a bit more detail. So we have a variable already for the ending platform. As soon as our player touches it, we're going to have an explosion appear. So we're going to start by referring to the part, and then we'll use the touched event. And then with the colon, we can connect the function to it. So you'll see this in a lot of Roblox tutorials when there's a certain event. So the touched is an event. When you have events, you can connect functions to it. So if you already have like a given function that you want, you can just put the function in there. But if you don't have it, then you can make use of something called anonymous functions, which is that you write function, and in the parentheses you put the arguments. In this case, it'd be the other part that touched. And then move your cursor over 1. And then you get yourself now the space where you can write the function itself that's supposed to trigger on the event. Another reminder where this comes from, how we know to use this other part. You can go to view and then object browser. Okay. this screen is going to come up. We are using parts. So we go down to where it says part. And here we can see the different things. So parts are objects of the part class. Each of those objects has access to methods and properties and events. We can see them here. So these blue icons refer to properties that we can change. These pink ones are methods that we can use on the parts. This lightning are events. Okay, so that's the one we're going to be using, the touch event. And we can see that this, when you connect a function that uses this event, you can actually expect the argument of the other part that touched. So that's where that came from. We are not just wizards, and we have to do a little bit of investigation to come up with this stuff. So I wanted to show you that. And I also want to make a bit of a reference to the properties here, because we can get a lot of clues also as to what we can change on a part just simply by looking at the part. And then right here where it says properties, a bunch of this stuff actually can be changed. So brick color, transparency, these are things that we're changing via scripts. So you can also use the property. If you see it here, there's a good chance you can modify it through scripts. Now going back, first thing we want to do when we are using the touched event is something called debouncing, because this event would trigger so fast when somebody is on it, when anything's touching it, that it's hard to like keep track of it for it to actually do what you want to do. So to debounce perhaps it's good if I just demonstrate the problem. Let's say when the ending platform is touched, I'm gonna print yay, and I want to show you. I'm gonna remove this other print statement, and I'm gonna show you what happens if we don't debounce. So when I get to the end, then we're gonna trigger the touched event, and it hasn't been debounced. So if I move around, it really happens a lot. Now, one of the downsides of the touched event is that if I stand still, it actually stops. You can see it, this counter is going up at the bottom in the output. So the touched event is not good at like letting you know if someone is standing on a part. It's only the initial touch that matters, and every time I move my character, my feet are touching it. So that's why it really triggers a lot. So it's hard to keep track of it when it triggers this much. That's why we want to debounce. So we do so by creating a variable. We can call it local is touched. We'll set that equal to false. And then the first thing we do once we are making our anonymous function inside the touched event is use an if statement. So if it's not touched, then we can proceed. Another thing we need to do now is check if what touched it was actually a player. So we can create a variable called humanoid and set that equal to the other part. That would actually be the limb, so like the feet, for example. And then the parent of the feet would be the humanoid itself. So it's like humanoid has limbs. So we're looking to see if it is a humanoid that touched. So now we're gonna find the humanoid. If it manages to find the humanoid, then it'll actually set that equal to the humanoid variable. So that will actually exist. If it didn't find it, then humanoid would be set to nil and it would not exist. And that's something that we can use to our advantage with if statements. If a variable exists, if it's not nil, then it's automatically taken as true. So we can say if humanoid, then we can now say, okay, if it's humanoid, set is touch to true. And we can do a wait so that it only happens, let's say, once every second. And then after the wait, touch is equal false. This is our setup. What we put in between the touched equals true and touched equals false, that's going to be the code itself. But there's a little bit of setup, this debouncing, going to make your code really behave a lot more like you would expect. So we can put our explosion here. Okay, we can put our explosion here. So how do we set an explosion? We can make a function for that. Anytime we want to make explosions, instead of having to rewrite the explosion code, we can use a function. So let me show you how that works. We can make a function, call it, let's call it function explode. And then the part that we want to explode on. Then we can say local explosion can be equal to instance of a new explosion. Then we're gonna set the explosion position to be equal to the parts position. And then we're gonna set the parent of the explosion to be the workspace. So it's in the game. So we're gonna basically, we're putting an explosion into the world, into the workspace. And the position of that explosion is gonna match the position of the part. I wanna show you now that we can refer to the explode function from inside of another function. That's going to be very useful. And then here we can put the ending platform. Sweet. Now, if we go and we run the script, let's go and test it out. It should explode when we get to the end. Woo. Oh, there it is. Oh, one of my legs. Oh, that's funny. So you might get this thing where the explosion is it's not even deadly enough that it kills your character. That's because the explosion radius has to be able to reach up to your character's neck. Otherwise, you get this kind of thing, which is kind of funny, I guess, in a way. I wanted to also show you that you can mess with the explosion blast radius. So to really make that explosion more deadly, we can increase the blast radius. I think if we set it equal to 60, it should be enough to really get us. So let's see here. See if I can manage to make the jump. Yeah. Oh, here we go. Oh. Yeah, it got us indeed. It definitely got us indeed. That's hilarious. Okay. Awesome. So I want to show you that I was able to call this explode function here because we made this function a global function. If I would take this now and put the explode function, let's say, inside of the add function, I want to show you what would happen. See, if it was a local function, explode no longer would work. It would say that there's an unknown global here, explode. So that's really the main difference there between global functions and local functions. So local functions can only be seen inside of the function where they're declared, and global functions can be seen anywhere. So you just undo and put it back. One thing that happened also is that this event here only started going after all the platforms were done with their disappearing. So if you want to just set that to happen from the beginning, just make sure that you put this like touched event in front of the disappears, and then now I could just run up to it without having to wait for all these platforms to disappear, and it would just blow me up. So there we have it. It's a fun little demonstration with functions, so I hope you feel a lot more comfortable. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer all of them. Also, join us on Discord. We can answer questions there as well. And in the next video, we'll go into loops, and you can imagine if we had a loop here, then these platforms could continue to disappear indefinitely, right? So that would be one use for loops there. And you can see how we're starting to build our coding fundamentals and making our games more interesting. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to be notified when we post new videos. Also, keep an eye out for upcoming workshops on our website and join the Discord to get involved in our community. We'll see you on the next one. Oh yeah!